49ers locker room intel after their 38-13 win over the Chicago Bears. Very possibly a season saver for the 49ers. It turns out that both Brock Purdy and Lenoir spoke to the team last night. That doesn't normally happen. The 49ers normally don't have players deliver addresses to the team the night before games. But this time they did, and it really appears to have worked. George Kittle spoke of an air of desperation that the 49ers carried into today's game that they didn't have earlier this season. And he seemed to credit at least some of it to the speeches from Purdy and from Lenoir. And I think that the air of desperation might have also captured the coaching staff this week. Kittle said that the 49ers implemented a screen pass that they had never before run. Newly installed screen pass into the playbook on that first drive. It was a 33-yard play to George Kittle that I thought really sparked the 49ers. Entire left side of the offensive line was downfield blocking. So Jalen Moore at left tackle, Ben Barch before he was injured at left guard, and then Jake Brendel, the center, was out in front. Excellent play, took advantage of some over-aggressiveness from the Bears' defensive ends, and the 49ers were off and rolling. Remember that the 49ers had entered this game, or entered last week, having thrown the fewest screen passes, or even called the fewest screen passes in the NFL. Kyle Shanahan saw an opportunity today, and he went back to the screen pass well multiple times. George told me if the screens are working, Kyle Shanahan is going to go back to that well. And maybe the issue had been that a couple screens earlier this year had gotten blown up, and Kyle Shanahan wasn't calling as many of those. But he needed to get back to the bread and butter for the 49ers to look like the 49ers of old, and he was able to get back to the bread and butter today. The thing that I gathered most out of the locker room, though, was those two meetings, Purdy and Lenoir. And supposedly Purdy coming back into the huddle just a play after he was injured, after his neck got bent backwards. That was another one of those, oh, this is leadership kind of moments. It was Malik Mustafa, who's on the defense, who talked about the great play that the 49ers expect from Purdy to continue for years to come. That combined with the fact that he was an MVP finalist already last year, Mustafa wasn't even in the building yet last year. He was still at Wake Forest. But he talks about the past, and then he talks about the future of Brock Purdy as giving the quarterback gravitas, the type of gravitas needed to lead the team in tough times. And Brock Purdy talked about that very fact over the course of this week. He said, we find out who we're really about when we're 5-7, when things aren't going our way. Well, if that's the case, then Brock Purdy, what is he really about? Well, an NFL leading 13 yards per attempt, 20 of 25 for 325 yards today. Couple touchdown passes. Jawan Jennings, the first one, corner out back of the end zone. And then Jawan was working against the Bears' number 2 corner on the second one. I think the Bears were sleeping on an out pattern. I asked Jawan about it. He said, yeah, but they might have been because he ran the move inside. It was a choice route on the second touchdown. And the 49ers beat the tendency of the Bears. So the screen passes, they beat the tendency. With the choice route to Jawan Jennings on the second touchdown, they beat the tendency. I talk so much about Kyle Shanahan and the chess match, and the 49ers offensively just not really being ahead in the chess match this year. Well, it seems that they got ahead in the chess match today. And it had been all of the Kyle Shanahan disciples, maybe with the exception of Matt LaFleur, that were struggling when it came to the play calling metrics this year. And look what happened with Sean McVay, who had also been struggling. He led his Rams to a 44-42 win over Buffalo. The Rams dropped 44 on the Bills. So the Rams are coming here on Thursday. Stadium is going to be lit up like it is right behind me on Thursday night. Going to be a massive, massive game where the 49ers have a chance to get back to 7-7. And if they can carry the same air of desperation that they talked about in the locker room today, well, maybe they can do more of the same. Talked to Talanoa Hufanga briefly. Remember in 2022, Talanoa, start of his all-pro season, had a pick 6 against Matthew Stafford in 2022. It's been such a full-circle injury journey for him. He was right back in that starting lineup today, albeit on a pitch count, and I thought he immediately made the 49ers defense better. Jair Brown has had a bit of a rough go of it this year, angle-wise, right? Tracking some of those runs has been tough. Hufanga's a natural when it comes to the angles to take on run defense, and I thought that really solidified what the 49ers needed because you want to make Caleb Williams pass. He's not a good quarterback. He's not a good passer. He might be able to move a little bit, but he hadn't been an efficient passer, hasn't been a timely passer. 7 sacks today for the 49ers. 6 of them credited to player 1 when Caleb Williams threw backwards, but he's taken more sacks than any quarterback in the league, despite the fact that they've blocked pretty well for him, despite the fact that they have weapons. It's because he holds onto the ball too long. So Hufanga comes in and he restores order for a run defense that had been abominable for the 49ers over the past 2 weeks. I really think Talanoa was a big piece of that because you could, and I asked Malik Mustafa about this in the locker room. It's all about communication on the back end. And the way that NFL offenses operate these days, they move so quickly. You've got to constantly be barking orders, shifting guys. Hufanga's in the very back of that defense, so everything's in front of him. So he's the one that is directing traffic around. I really think that his energy, his communication was present from the very start. It stopped the Bears' run game. DeAndre Swift did almost nothing in this football game, and then it made Caleb Williams throw, and the Bears ended up with 4 yards in the first half. Caleb Williams, when you factor in the sacks, ended up with negative passing yardage in the first half. Purdy was 13.6 net yards per attempt. That includes sacks. Caleb Williams was negative 0.5 net yards per attempt in the first half. And the 49ers might have let him off the hook when D. Winters dropped what should have been pick 6. Leonard Floyd's up to 8.5 sacks on the year. He's a 10-sack machine every single season. 49ers made Caleb Williams look like Caleb Williams. They didn't look like the bad defense anymore, and that was a big step up for San Francisco. They can build on that entering next week, but I think Hufanga's return was really big in that regard. Injury news, probably a foot sprain for Isaac Guerendo, but he did speak to the media. That was a good sign. We'll see if he's going to be available on Thursday. I talked to Christian McCaffrey briefly in the locker room. He has got the big brace on his right knee. No updates on that front, but he was there supporting his team today. And then Ben Barch said that it was not a fractured ankle, but he's obviously going to get tested out more tomorrow. That's a tough break. He was filling in for Aaron Banks, who was, I think, feeling better now. But Spencer Burford had to finish this game at left guard because Banks is still in the concussion protocol. Barch, I mean, it had started. He was part of that screen convoy for George Kittle at the start of the game, and unfortunately, he was hurt fairly early on for the 49ers in this one. I mentioned it on the instant reaction. George Kittle's mom, Jan, walked up to me on the field in the pregame, and she said, I think 150 yards for George today. Well, he finished 6 for 151. How's that for George Kittle delivering for the 49ers? Then talking about that sense of desperation that the 49ers were playing with. Well, they got to continue playing with that sense of desperation, and they have a quick turnaround. It's going to be a rest day for the 49ers tomorrow. Back out here, walkthrough-like practice on Tuesday, and then actual walkthrough on Wednesday. Thursday night football against the Rams team that just beat the Bills, and a chance to get back to 500 for the 49ers. They talk as if everything's still in front of them, and I have to agree. The Seahawks play the Packers coming off extra rest, and then they play the Minnesota Vikings. Sam Darnold just threw 5 touchdowns. Seattle can lose the next 2. Even if Seattle only loses one of the next 2, the Rams are coming to play the Seahawks. Actually, the Seahawks have to go to play the Rams in Week 18 at SoFi. So there's a lot of football still left to be played. 49ers showed their championship pedigree today, playing with that desperation. Even injured, this was the best. Even injured, they're really good because entering this season, this was the best roster in the NFL. It was deep, and it can withstand a lot. It's withstood a ton. The fact that they won 38-13 today was impressive as hell. All right, that's 49ers Locker Room Intel. Stay tuned on the San Francisco Standard. Article about all this is coming up very, very soon. Talk to you guys in a bit.